What's going on, everyone? And welcome to Poppy TV. I'm your host, Poppy, and welcome to another episode where we see Okinawa through my eyes. And today, I'm going to go into a very peculiar part of Japanese culture that can be somewhat of a culture shock to Americans, especially when it comes on to relationships, platonic and romantic. But let's get into it. So first, before we even go into it, right, we have to talk about Japanese society on an anthropological level, right? So in anthropology, you have this concept of high context societies and low context societies, right? So in a low context society, information is explicit, exchanges of communication is more direct, everything is explained and said to you, and it's a very easy in-group or collective that you can get into, right? It's a very easy group that anyone can get into. Whereas a high context society, it's harder to get into. Everything is implicit. There's very nuanced and subtle cues that people grow up learning, and there's a lot of things that are done rather than said, right? And if you put two and two together, you can kind of guess what society is high context, right? And what society is low context. So I would definitely say that American society is low context, because a lot of the times, obviously it's a heterogeneous society, meaning that it's an extremely diverse society. You have people from all walks of life, from different cultures come in, they become American, and they share in this experience that is to be American, right? But in a lot of ways, there's a lot of things that are said, that are taught explicitly, whereas high context societies like in Japan, there are certain things that you do and don't do because that is the norm, right? And to add a little caveat on this that will kind of help explain what I'm talking about is low context societies, such as in the United States, is more concentrated on individualism, whereas high context societies are usually homogenous and they're usually concentrated on the collective, the greater good of the society as a whole, right? Why am I talking about high context and low context, right? So for anyone that's familiar with Japanese society at all, whether that's through TV shows, anime, people who actually visit or live here, there's a lot of peculiarities that go on in, Japanese society. For instance, when I go into someone's house, it could be a relative, it could be a stranger, I have to say ojamashimasu, meaning, excuse me, right? Excuse, like you're kind of excusing your presence for coming into their house, right? Because you're a stranger, right? People say Itadakimasu before they eat, which means let's eat. It's not a direct translation, but that's basically what it means. Or after you finish a meal, you say Gochisousama desu, which is kind of giving gratitude. It's a phrase that gives gratitude to the person that gave you the food, right? And those two words, Itadakimasu and Gochisousama, don't have any connotations to religion, as far as I know, compared to like how Westerners might say grace when they're eating food. Those things go on. And there's a whole bunch of other things that in a professional setting that you as a person, whether you're Japanese or not, if you're in a professional setting, you have to, do things a certain way because that's how society dictates it, right? Why am I going into all this? So the driving force that I believe that drives this feeling of wanting to do things a proper way is called Haji.
What?
And Haji directly means shame in Japanese culture. So Haji, if you ever went back in history and you watch old samurai movies or animes, and a lot of the times you'll see, like, if the samurai fails in his mission, he fails to do what his daimyo or master says, he usually commits a ritualistic suicide, right? Because he feels great shame. And in Japanese society, for the most part, not everyone is a monolith. Not everyone is going to follow their culture to a T. But for the most part, in a lot of ways, shame or Haji is worse than death. And that leads to a lot of suicides back then and even now when it comes on to like, tests, or if something happens to someone who works at a company and for a long time and they lose their job and whatnot. So Haji comes from a deep-seated desire to fit in, to reach the ideal that's set aside in Japanese culture, right? In Japanese society, rather. So from when Japanese people are very young, it's instilled within themselves to be like, hey, I should try to do my best, try not to bring shame to myself, bring shame to my family. I need to do things right within society. And I believe that a lot of the societal behavior also stems from filial piety. So I think Haji also drives from that. Like, you don't want to bring shame on your family's name, because in Japanese society and in a lot of East Asian societies, your family and your family name is extremely important, right? If you're a foreigner, sorry, I'm sweating really bad. So if you're a foreigner and you come here and you're in a platonic, and especially if you're in a romantic relationship with someone, a lot of the times, especially with American sensibilities or Western sensibilities, you might do things in public or in front of family that could be really rude or unpleasant to people, and you can bring shame to your friend or your romantic partner, which in turn could bring shame to their family. So with any culture, I would say it's important to, read up, to familiarize yourself with, particular countries' culture and whatnot, because you don't want to go there and go against the norm and then you're in trouble with the law, or you're in trouble with someone, or you lose a friendship, or you lose a marriage or a relationship with someone because you did something incorrectly, right? So if you see Japanese people act and move a certain way, a lot of it is because that's what Japanese society dictates, and the driving force behind that is they don't want to be shamed in public, right? They don't want to bring shame to themselves and to their family by extension. So anyways, guys, it's really hot. I gotta get out of here. And that's all I have for today. And I hope you learned something. Remember to stay blessed and stay tuned. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.